2015, the year in which
PSP model을 uppskatta underage cougar simulator
finally came out. The year where the ending of a fucking Resident Evil game actually almost made me tear up just a little. And now, it is
the end.
So once again, it's time for a barrage of cynical and snarky comments about what people think the game industry is like, and others being hopeful and optimistic because they only play indie games or something and don't know fuck about shit. And here am I, stuck somewhere in the middle, not because I think I'm better than either, but because I haven't really played nearly enough newer games to really say anything about anything other than the few games I have played. My apologies to Undertale, Soma, Fatal Frame 5, City Skylines, Bloodborne, Grow Home, Rainbow Six Siege, Until Dawn, and Devil's Thread, because I can't spell. I'm sure you're all great games in your own ways, and I will certainly play and review most of you at some point. Anyway, this isn't really like a top 10 video or whatever, or like a Goatsy Games video. It's just it's just a video about some games I still had some... Why are you laughing, Higgins? Is this funny to you?
Goatsy Games.
Goatsy Games. That's how they write it. No, not goatee. I meant goatsy, like the guy who shoves bottles up his ass. I'm leaving this in. Fuck you. This is the take we're going with now. Whatever. These are simply some games I still had some shit to say about. So, yeah.
Let's talk some shit.
Man, the fucking Order 1886. If there's ever a game that embodies the straw that broke the camel's toe saying, then I'd say it's probably this one. Not a particularly great game by any means, but I honestly feel that the mass hating it got was a little bit overboard. Don't get me wrong, it got shat on for perfectly legit reasons like the Bork stealth sections, repetitive and washed out combat, but it never really frustrated me or made me regret my time spent with it or anything like that. I think that's mostly because I have yet to play most of the third-person generic ups it's being compared to. So, the fatigue, what I guess people felt, just wasn't really there for me. And also, probably maybe because I'm not very subtle to peer pressure. I mean, it's no secret that a lot of people start aping each other as soon as some kind of gaming controversy happens. And sure, the game has plenty of faults, but again, it just kinda seems to me like the Order simply came out at the wrong time. Gamers wanted something new. Something next gen. And what the Order was simply more of the same. People just got caught up in the shitstorm surrounding its release and blindly gave every objective point made about the game a negative swirl. Things like the overabundance of cutscenes and lack of player agency were widely regarded as negatives, despite there not being an incredible amount of debate going on regarding why that was, other than, this isn't what I want. Overall, I honestly don't think the game is any worse than all of the other cinematic bullshit games. I mean, it has some nice atmosphere, some of the guns are pretty cool, the combat could have been better, but I've definitely seen worse. It is kind of a shame that the story pretty much ends halfway with nothing more to say for itself than, I'm Batman! But other than that, it's not like I didn't enjoy it at all. And I certainly don't think that the game does quite as much wrong as some people said it did. The only big glaring issues that I'd say the game has are a lack of gameplay variety, rather poorly thought out stealth sections, somewhat shitty writing, and the fact that it's clearly sequel baiting. But for as far as the slow climbing bits or the dicking around and looking at shit segments go, I have a harder time seeing these as negatives as they didn't bother me at all. Hell, if anything, I actually thought these were kinda neat. So, yeah.
Alright, if you look behind you, yeah, on the piano, you'll see a little white box. Yeah, it's attached to the lights. That thing, yeah, there should be a button on that. Oh, there's no batteries in there. So it's not gonna work.
Back when I reviewed the first part of Life is Strange, I ended the review with the following. Anyway, I'll probably get back to this and give it a full review once all 5 episodes happened. Probably. I think. Maybe not. And, well, since then, I've played through all of it while taking notes and shit for my Games of 2015 lists. Which I'm not doing because I haven't played every game that came out in 2015, so my list would be kind of pointless. Anyway, I guess I kinda liked where the first installment was going, but saying that, I also had no idea where exactly that was going. I pretty much expected it to tick all of the standard teen drama bullshit boxes, and while it certainly ticked a few, it would be a huge fucking understatement to say that I was not expecting the game to go where it eventually went. It completely subverted all expectations I had based on my initial review. Life is Strange is hand down one of the better video game stories told this year, and I'm saying that fully realizing how retarded this game can be sometimes. Yeah. That shit is indeed very fucking terrible. Not to mention the fact that this game is quite literally Tumblr sometimes, and if not, then the fucking music certainly is. And I would totally understand if that shit makes you cringe, cause in all honesty, it certainly makes my asshole invert as well. But there is more to writing than just dialogue. And in terms of pacing, plot points, and general tonnage, the game is pretty fucking good, even when compared to standards set by other media, which, granted, aren't very high considering the stuff that popular culture favors. This game holds up. None of the plot twists were predictable, none of the characters ended up being as stereotypical as I thought they were, and overall the entire game is a fucking exercise in pretty okay good storytelling. And for that reason alone, it deserves to be on this list thing.
Voice. I need to have my voice, you see, to be able to record video.
Alright, I'm just gonna start, I think. The Metal Gear Solid series is a lot like a puzzle. And while it may not be the prettiest of puzzles, at least all of the puzzle pieces fit together. But then, someone came along and hit the puzzle table with a sledgehammer, scattering all of the pieces across the floor. And while the puzzle was being rebuilt, someone else came along and opened up a completely different puzzle box and just threw all of the pieces over the old. And so, by the time the puzzle got put back together, it was an ugly-ass Frankenstein puzzle with gaffer tape and nails and shit. And to me, Metal Gear Solid 5's story is like someone came along with an unopened, factory-sealed copy of the original puzzle, and instead of just scattering those pieces over the floor like some kind of asshole, they neatly placed the puzzle box on top of the finished Frankenstein puzzle, saying, "Hey buddy, you made kind of a mess. Why not start all over again?" And now the MGS series is almost kind of, sort of, but also not really still a functional puzzle again. It's just kind of a fucking shame then that because of some gross, disgusting factory defect, a couple of pieces went missing. Anyway, I still feel pretty much the same about it as how I did back when I reviewed it. The story, or the way it's told rather, is kinda meh, but I love the ending and I still think it might be the best game in the series mechanically. Well, the best game is probably 3 overall, and I'd say that 4 has better systems in place than 5, but 4 was barely a game at times, so yeah. It's pretty good though. Definitely lacking in some ways, and I can totally see it being disappointing to some, but because I don't have a soul, you won't ever see me boarding the hype train. So I had no preemptive overhype to be able to have such a lust for disappointment to begin with. All I knew going into it was that it would likely be more like Peace Walker 2 than MGS4 2, and I was pretty okay with that right from the outset. The only thing I'd pit against all of this is that, having now seen and rewatched a few of the game's trailers, there was definitely some very glaring false advertising going on. Promises like it being the missing link seemed just a bit too far out, all things considered. But on the other hand, the missing link is still a pretty vague claim to make, which still left a lot of room for people to make up their own expectations. So, I don't really know how I feel about this, to be honest. In a way, I'd like to ask people to stop partaking in the endless repeating cycle of constant hype and disappointment that surrounds every new major fucking game release ever. But I'd also say that publishers and developers have misused that cycle one too many times, and MGS5 isn't really much of an exception here. This might seem like kind of a cuntish remark to make, but I do feel people should be able to put their trust into a game's developer. They should be able to expect MGS5 to be everything they want it to be and tie up every loose plot end, cause that's honestly what it should have done. Could it have failed? Fuck yeah. MGS4 promised more or less the same and fucked up a bunch of shit in the process, but at least it fucking tried. But MGS5 didn't even try. And because of that, I think it's fair to say that it was almost objectively disappointing in some weird kind of way. And that's, well, pretty fucking disappointing. At the end of the day though, I'm just glad I wasn't affected by it, as I had tons of fun driving my Jeep through the desert and gunning down motherfuckers in the process. 10 out of 10 across the board. Oh, major review sites, how you help to keep this industry grounded and functional. Truly, we should all believe the hype. More so than any other game on this list, this one has made me reflect and think about myself and my work as an artist. Games like Killer 7 and Silent Hill 2 tickle my fancy in a similar way, but those often make me think about what I aspire to make, instead of the stuff I've already done. Even the shit. Video games often ape movies. Sometimes this makes it good, and sometimes this makes it bad. But usually, they only ape shit on a very superficial level without really thinking about how to implement/rip off what they're implementing/ripping off. And therefore, games often only tackle things that are easily recognizable, like horror or big muscle boys with guns, thus leaving out other types of movie genres that are more of an abstract concept, like documentaries. Nothing really defines a documentary per se in the same way that action-adventure is defined by common elements amongst all kinds of different media. They can pretty much be about whatever it is you want them to be. So tackling that in a different medium is hard simply based on the fact that they don't necessarily possess such recognizable features. Yet somehow, David Redden has managed to actually pull this off. Whether if this is something he actually thought about, or if he just kinda decided to do whatever and more or less stumbled across ideas as he went on, this is, for all intents and purposes, a playable documentary. And that's all I'm going to say about it as well. as I feel that it's better experienced the less you know about it. And trust me, I fucking hate people that say that because it's bullshit. So, while I do feel a bit weird recommending it based off of nothing and then foolishly expect people to give even half the amount of shit what I gave, see what it's like, Undertale fans, I do feel relatively comfortable in saying that if you make anything, then you should probably give this game a go. It only took me about an hour and a half of my time, and yet it still meant a fuck of a whole lot more to me than any of these much grander games on this list. This game is actually something new, something different. It's not just a game aping a documentary film, it is a game reinventing a documentary as a game. And that shit is sexy as fucking fuck.